Let's talk about prisons. Who's in them, how they got there, what purpose they serve, how we can improve upon that. We'll end up touching upon universal basic income. Who's in prisons? Well, judges send people to prisons upon the recommendations of prosecutors. There's a creative prosecutor, I've talked to him in Philadelphia, Lawrence Krasner. He recommends that the prosecutors working for him and considering sentencing recommendations take into account the cost of that, compare it to the gain that society will have. Typically, the cost of a year in prison is about $70,000. I think that's pretty close to the cost of going to Harvard for a year. So if you get somebody in jail for 5 years for what amounts to petty theft, you're spending $350,000 to remove that person from society. That doesn't really make sense. And the racial prejudice in sentencing is pretty self-evident. There's so many hundreds of examples. College swimmers at Stanford get off with violent rape with a slap on the hands. And a woman in Texas who's homeless puts down an address so that her 6-year-old can go to school in a decent school, and she is sentenced to 5 years in jail. Tell me that makes sense. No, don't tell me that. I think you're a fool. So what purpose does prison serve? What is a societal benefit? Is it to punish people, purely to punish them? To take advantage of the ability under the 13th Amendment to work them like slaves? Not in a moral society, it's not. The 13th Amendment says you can do that, and it errs in saying that, but it certainly does not say that you should do that, or that you must do that. So let us consider the other possibility, the only rational possibility, that prison of itself, by separating you from your family and loved ones, restricting your movements, is a punishment. But it should also be a rehabilitation, because most of those people are going to be coming out of jail, and you want them to be functional members of society. Punishment, physical, brutal punishment, as is often the case in Arizona. There's an 80-something-year-old sheriff who has been a PAO, who has been pardoned by Donald Trump for disobeying court orders. And he puts people in tent cities, and they die in the Arizona heat. And there's no punishment for him. That is not punishment. That is not what petty theft or use of marijuana or any number of crimes. If we want to talk about crimes, let's profile the bankers. They're making out like bandits because, well, they're bandits. And they own our Congress, and Congress bails them out every time they fail, so they set up failure. But that's a different discussion. Back to the prisons. Rehabilitation is achieved generally by education. So a good prison system should offer educational opportunity to citizens, just as a good nation should offer tuition-free education, not just pre-K through 12, but through all public universities and trade schools. And the trade schools should include training for every job as a publicly funded and regulated part of education to qualify you for different professions, from truck driving to hairstyling. It appears that we need some training for congressmen too, but we'll withhold that discussion. So the other thing that you can do in prison is to make sure that you keep your family together. This is an objective that should be foremost in the minds of people who are running the prisons. You want the person not only to return to society in a functional and a useful fashion, but also to return to the community. The community begins with family. So if the prisoner chooses to work, he should be making the minimum wage, and he should be able to put that whole wage away for his exit from prison, or he should be able to return that whole wage to his family to keep his family whole. Now, also paying prisoners at a minimum wage means that companies like Whole Foods, and I know there are many others, will not be taking advantage of the slave labor of paying prisoners 10 or 25 cents an hour, and they will not be taking jobs away from free men and women. So those are options. We want people to return from prison and never go back. The other thing that needs to be spoken to is that no aspect of incarceration of a human being should be profitable to anyone. If we're going to put someone in prison, we should be paying the whole cost of that. We should not be, as in Florida, saying, oh, the cost of the trial should be paid by the user, meaning the person who's just been convicted, so that when he returns, he will return with a fine or fee against him, which of course he can't repay because he has this little check mark that says, I'm a returned felon. So his job prospects are nil. These are basic things. Basic things. Now, when you do these things, when you have a person in prison and he has access to a phone at a normal rate so he can talk to his family, even video chat with them, when he has meals provided for him, when he has a roof over his head, and he's taking courses to learn a new trade, a new skill, or philosophy, his choice, her choice. What about the guy on the outside who has none of these things given to him? We wish people who are not in prison to at least prosper as well as those who are in prison. This means that we should provide a universal basic income to all people. Make it up with tax rates that are truly progressive. That's it. Tom Wells, running for U.S. Congress, a Democrat in Florida, District 3. Thank you.